Hello my crafty friends, this is Monica from Allsewpetite. Welcome back to my channel. I have something super exciting to share with you today. A highly requested video tutorial for my laptop bag pattern. The best part, this pattern is absolutely free when you join my mailing list. This is an advanced beginner project, but if you are already comfortable with sewing zippers and curved corners, I am confident that you can finish making your own version of this laptop bag. And did I mention it comes in two different sizes, small and large. The pattern features large slip pocket on the front, securely closed with a magnetic snap. There is a zipper pocket on the back. Nice wide opening along the top edge. So to get to the main compartment, you need to open the zipper. Inside is fully lined, as you can see. All edges are finished with bias binding, and you will also find an additional slip pocket inside. There are two handles, so you can carry your bag by hand, just like that. Or if you prefer, you can carry it on your shoulder thanks to the adjustable shoulder strap. In this tutorial, I'm making the large version of the laptop bag, and the only thing that I've changed, or rather omitted, is the adjustable shoulder strap. I have a few different tutorials showing you various different straps, so in case if you need some help, I'm going to link them in the description box below. If you want to learn how to create your own version of this laptop bag, then keep on watching. To make your bag, you will need external fabric and lining fabric. Since we are making a laptop bag, I highly recommend that you pick fabric that is suitable for this project. So I would highly recommend fabrics that are waterproof or water resistant, and either use them on the exterior portion of your bag or as a lining, to ensure that your laptop and your other electronics stay safe. For my laptop bag, I'm mixing this lightweight waterproof fabric and this green faux leather. So I'm going to use those two fabrics on the exterior portion of my bag, and in the lining, I also decided to use waterproof fabric, but since I ran out of one color, I'm going to mix two different colors. If you are using very lightweight fabric, such as quilting cotton, or maybe fabric that tends to fray a lot or is stretchy, I highly recommend fusing some woven interfacing to the back of the fabric to give your fabric just a little bit of structure and stability. If, like me, you are using lightweight to medium weight fabric, I highly recommend adding some sort of batting or flexible foam stabilizer to provide that cushion to your laptop, so your laptop stays nice and secure inside and you don't really have to worry about damaging your laptop while you are carrying it. So using some sort of batting or foam stabilizer like this is perfect for this project. Fusible fleece is also a great solution to add that cushion to your bag, but depending on the type that you are using, you may want to double it up to provide that softness. Since I want to reduce bulkiness in my laptop bag, I decided to use Decovil Light on the front pocket of my bag. So for the main portion of the bag, I'm going to use this foam stabilizer. However, on the front slip pocket, I'm going to use this Decovil Light because my fabric is quite lightweight and I just want to add a little bit more of stability to it. You will need two number 5 zippers. As you can see, I'm using a zipper by the meter, and I have 3 zipper pulls ready. One will be used on the zipper pocket, and then those 2 I'm going to use on the main closure. If you want, you can use just a single zipper pull instead. You will need a ruler to take some measurements, your favorite marking tool, single fold bias binding. I'm using store-bought cotton bias binding that is 18 millimeters or 3/4 of an inch wide. You will also need a magnetic closure for the slip pocket, and depending on the strap that you're going to make, if you're going to make the strap as per sewing instructions, you will need 2 rectangle rings and 1 strap adjuster that is 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch wide. If, however, you prefer to make a strap that is removable, you'll also need 2 swivel hooks. As a side note, if you don't have rectangle rings, use D rings instead. We're going to install some rivets today, so I have a hole puncher and my hand press ready. You'll also need some snips and scissors, some clips or pins to hold your fabric in place. Double-sided tape might be very handy today, and depending on the type of fabric you are going to use, you may need multi-surface glue or fray check glue. You will need to cut 2 zipper casings from external fabric and 2 from your lining fabric, 1 gusset from external fabric and 1 from your lining fabric. You'll need to cut 1 top handle and 1 bottom handle from external fabric. As you can see, I'm using an accent fabric on my top handle. You will need to cut 2 top panels from external fabric, 1 zipper pocket from your lining fabric, 2 bottom panels from external fabric. You will also need 1 slip pocket from external fabric and 3 from your lining fabric. And lastly, you will need to cut 1 front lining and 1 back lining from your lining fabric. If you are making the adjustable strap as per sewing instructions, you will also need to cut 1 strap from your external fabric. But since I'm going to make my strap using this webbing, I didn't cut that piece. To reduce the bulk at the seams, I've cut my stabilizers without the seam allowance. So just in case if you don't have fusible stabilizers and you worry about the bulk, I'm going to show you when to place the stabilizers, when to use them, when to add them to your bag during the construction. So keep all your stabilizers aside for now, unless you are using fusible stabilizers. So in a situation for my slip pocket, as I mentioned, I'm using Decoville Light. This is a fusible stabilizer, so I've cut it without the seam allowance, and I also placed it on the back, centered it on the back of the fabric, and using an iron and a lot of steam, I fused it to the fabric. If you are using fusible stabilizers, you can do the same thing on the external gusset and also on the external zipper casings. Keep the main front and back stabilizers aside for later, even if you are using fusible stabilizers. Take your top and bottom handles and on the wrong side of the fabric, draw a line in the center. Then you can take this to the pressing station and with wrong sides together, fold the edges towards the line, just like that. So as you can see, I already prepped the top handle. If, like me, you cannot press your fabric, you can always apply some double-sided tape along each side of the line. Then you'll be able to peel off the plastic cover and bring that edge towards the line. So take your time and fold both of those edges towards the line, just like that. Once you have your both handles prepped, then you're going to place them wrong sides together. So what I like to do is to apply some double-sided tape along the center where the raw edges meet. So this is the wrong side. So what I do is to just apply double-sided tape just like that. This will ensure that when I place my handles together, the fabric doesn't shift. There we go. If you don't want to use double-sided tape, you can always place your handles and then clip them or pin them together, just like that. The bottom handle is slightly wider, so make sure you center your top handle, meaning that you have a little bit of the bottom handle visible on both sides. Again, press it with your fingers if you are using double-sided tape. If not, just carry on clipping it in place. When you are ready, you're going to take this to the machine now, and we're going to stitch about 2 millimeters from the edge of the top handle. So you're going to stitch along one side and then you're going to stitch along the other side. Once you've got that stitched, you're going to cut 2 smaller pieces that are the same height as your top panels. So about 10 centimeters for the large size and 9 centimeters for the small size. You can always take your top panel, measure it against it and then just mark it. And take your scissors and cut it down. So you need 2 of those pieces. So I'll take this, place it on top and cut another piece. Here we go. So you've got 2 connectors. Then you're going to take your handle, fold it in half and cut it. You want to make 2 smaller handles. Here you go, just like that. So place this aside for a second. Then you're going to take your top panel pattern piece and mark the placement of your handles and of your strap connector. So you want to mark it on the right side of the fabric. So place the pattern piece on top, line up the edges, and then take your pen or pencil and mark those notches. You're going to do that on both pieces. Here we go. Now you're going to take your D-ring or rectangle ring and feed your connector through that D-ring. So just like that. Then you're going to place the connector on top of your top panel. So right sides are facing up and you're going to line it up between those notches. So this is where the connector should be placed, just like that. Use a couple of pins or clips to hold that in place. Then you're going to take your handle and line up the edges of your handle at the notches. So again, I have notches here. I'm going to place my handle on top. So you want to make sure, again, right sides are facing up. So for me, the top handle is the right side. I'm going to clip that in place and making sure the handle is not twisted. So you want to keep it nice and straight. Line up the other edge at the other notches and clip everything together, just like that. Prep the other top panel in the same way. Then you can take this to the machine and we're going to baste everything together. So we're going to baste the handle along the bottom edge and then we're going to baste the connector along the bottom and top edge. And we're going to do that on both panels. Once we assemble the front and back panels and add the stabilizers, then we'll be able to anchor those handles and strap connectors in place. At the moment, you can leave it basted just like that. Now you can take your zipper pocket and on the wrong side of the fabric, draw a rectangle. This rectangle needs to be 1.5 centimeter tall by about 29 centimeters wide when you are making the small laptop bag, or 36 centimeters when you are making the large laptop bag. And this rectangle needs to be 1.5 centimeters down from that top edge. Then you're going to take your bottom panel and measure 1.5 centimeters from the top edge. And if you want, you can draw a line. Make sure you are using a erasable pen because this is the right side of the fabric. Then you're going to place your zipper pocket on top. So right sides are facing each other. Make sure you have your midpoints marked. I have a little notches here and here, so I can line them up. And you're going to line up the top edge of your zipper pocket along that line. So if you don't want to draw a line, you can simply take a ruler, place your ruler on top, and then place the edge of your zipper pocket against the ruler. So make sure everything is nice and straight, your pocket is centered. Then you're going to take some pins or clips and pin those two pieces together. Since I'm working with the fabric that I cannot really pin because I'm going to leave holes, I'm going to just take some masking tape and tape it in place to prevent the fabric from shifting. If you have very long clips, you can use long clips instead. There we go. Okay, next you're going to take this to the machine and we're going to stitch along the rectangle. To prevent the corners from being not nice and puckering, I highly recommend starting somewhere along the longer edges. So never start at the corner. So start somewhere along that longer edge, don't backstitch, go around the rectangle, and when you get to the beginning, stitch over a couple of those first stitches. So again, at the end, you don't want to backstitch either. Otherwise, you may end up with unnecessary bulk. Once you have this stitched, then you're going to take ruler and your pen and draw a line in the center of that rectangle. Here we go. You want to stop about 1 centimeter or 1.5 centimeter from the side edges. Then from that point, draw a line towards each corner. Next, you're going to take scissors and we're going to cut along those lines. So what I like to do is to take a pin or a needle and place it at the corners. So where I previously stitched, I place it like this on both sides. Here we go. This will prevent my scissors from going beyond the stitching line when I'm cutting the fabric. So now you can fold this in half, take scissors and just snip it in the center. This will give you an opening. And now, following those lines, cut your fabric. Stop at the tip of your triangle, and then you're going to cut it towards the corner on both sides. You want to get as close as you can to the stitching line without cutting the stitching line. So this pin is great because I don't have to worry about cutting my fabric too far. This will prevent it from happening. Then you can take those pins away, and using the opening, flip your zipper pocket to the back of that panel. So you're going to have to take your time, be very gentle not to rip the fabric. When you are ready, you can take this to the pressing station, and what you want to do is to press those seams nice and flat. This is how it should look like once your seams are nice and pressed. You should have nice neat corners. In case if you have any puckering at the corners, turn your fabric to the wrong side again and snip the fabric closer to the stitching line. Again, make sure you don't cut through the stitches. You want to just snip the fabric as close to the stitching as possible. This will give you nice, neat and sharp corners. So once you are ready, then you can take your zipper. So this is the number 5 zipper for my zipper pocket, and I already applied some double-sided tape along both edges. So if you want to do that now. Then you will need to decide which direction you want your zipper pocket to open once your laptop bag is constructed. So I typically like my zippers to open from left to right. So this is how it opens. Here we go. If you want your zipper to open from right to left, you will need to flip your zipper this way. So once you decide which direction you want your zipper to open, then you're going to place the zipper inside that window. So you're going to peel the plastic cover and then center the zipper inside that window. So since my fabric is a little bit tricky, I'm going to take my time. You want to make sure your zipper coil or zipper teeth are nice and centered. And then once you are ready, you're going to take this to the machine and we're going to stitch around all sides. Here we go, just like that. So what I like to do is to leave long thread tails at the beginning and the end. So I have a nice, smooth and neat stitching. So now I'm going to pull the thread to the back of the fabric. So what you want to do is to use pin or a needle to just grab on the loop and pull it to the back. Here we go. Then you can tie a knot to secure them in place. Just like that. And cut any excess. And to prevent the knot from unraveling, what I like to do is to just dab a little bit of glue. Next, you're going to fold your zipper pocket in half, so right sides are facing each other, and line up the bottom edge along the top edge of your zipper pocket, just like that. So your sides should be aligned as well. Clip everything together. Here we go. Then when you are ready, you can take this to the machine and we're going to stitch along those 3 sides. So what I like to do is to sew from the right side of the fabric. So you're going to fold your external piece out of the way, just like that. Then you're going to stitch along the side, then stitch along the top, and then stitch along the other side. Now you can take one of your top panels, place it on top of the bottom panel and clip it together. So right sides are facing each other. You want to line up the edges and clip them together. Here we go. Then you can take this to the machine and sew the seam. Open the panels and press the seam allowance towards the bottom panel. So if you look from the back, you want to press the seam allowance down, just like that. Then you're going to take this to the machine and top stitch along that finished seam. The back panel is now assembled, so place it aside for a second. Then repeat the steps for the front panel. So take the remaining bottom panel and your top panel. Place them right sides together. Line up the edges and pin or clip them together. Here we go. Next, you can take this to the machine, sew the seam. Then again, you're going to open the panels, press the seam allowance down, and then top stitch along the seam. Your front and back panels are assembled now. So if you are using fusible stabilizer, you can add it to the back of the fabric now. So you would take your stabilizer and fuse it to the back of the fabric. But since I'm using sew-in stabilizer and I cut it without the seam allowance, I'm going to change the order of construction slightly so I can show you how I add the stabilizer. So later we can top stitch our handles and connector without worrying about the stabilizer shifting too much. So I'm going to put those pieces aside, and first I'm going to construct the external and lining slip pockets. Take one of your lining slip pockets. If like me you're using different colors, then make sure it's the one that you're going to use to construct the external slip pocket. Now you're going to flip it to the back, so this is the wrong side of the fabric. Take a ruler and a pen or pencil and measure 3 centimeters from the top edge and mark a little notch, a little dot at the center, just like that. So I have a little notch here and I made sure that my little dot is in the center of that pocket. Then you're going to take washer, place it on top of that dot and mark the placement of your prongs, just like that. So since I didn't use any stabilizer on this fabric because this is waterproof canvas, and I used Decovil Light on my external fabric, I'm going to add a small piece of stabilizer just here, so I can ensure that my fabric doesn't rip and stretch while I'm using my pocket. So I'm going to repeat those steps by just marking the placement of my prongs, just like that. Now you can take small scissors, seam ripper, or precision blade and just cut your stabilizer and the fabric through those prong placement markings, just like that. I'm going to do that on the fabric as well. It's always best to cut the slits slightly smaller, because if you cut your slits too long, you will end up with magnetic snap being very loose and it may fall off from your fabric while you are using your bag. So to prevent that from happening, cut your slits slightly smaller. Then you can take one of those pieces and just double check. As long as your prongs go through those slits, you are fine. So now I know I'm happy with it. I'm going to take the male part of my snap, and from the right side of the fabric, insert the prongs through those slits, just like that. I'm going to place this piece on top. So I want to make sure I have extra stability, just like that. Then you're going to take one of your washers, place the washer over the prongs, and press the prongs in opposite direction. So it doesn't really matter if you press them inside or outside, it's preference. This is optional, but what I like to do is to use tape to cover that area, because those prongs sometimes can be a little bit sharp, and what may end up happening is they will rub off and damage the external fabric. So to stop that from happening, I'll cut a small portion, small piece of the tape and just stick it on top, just like that. Next, you're going to take your external slip pocket and place it on top. So right sides of the fabric are facing each other. You're going to line up the edges and then clip or pin just along that top edge. Here we go. When you are ready, take this to the machine and sew the seam. Now you can take this to the pressing station, separate your pieces. If you want, you can open the seam allowance, press it flat, then bring those two pieces wrong sides together and press the seam nice and flat. When you are ready, you can take this to the machine, and then you're going to top stitch along that finished seam and then baste the remaining three sides. Now you can take your front panel and place your slip pocket on top, just like that. You want to line up the edges, you want to line up the top edge of your slip pocket along the seam. So next we can find the placement of the snap, because we need to install it to the front panel. So what I like to do is to, once I have everything aligned, I typically press really hard on the snap, then I lift it and I have a little indent here, which I can mark it with my pen, and this way I know exactly where I need to install the female part of my snap. Now you know exactly where to install the female part of the snap, so go ahead and do that. As you can see, I have my snap installed. So now you're going to take your slip pocket, snap the closure, just like that. Then make sure everything is aligned. You want to line up your sides, the top edge, clip everything together. Here we go. And when you are ready, you can take this to the machine and baste your pocket around all sides. One thing that I have learned over the years when making bags with bias binding, just like this one, is that on some occasions, depending on the type of fabric you are using, you may end up with pockets that are a little bit wavy. So what happens is often when the fabric is very thick, there is not enough space here. So you end up with some sort of distortion on your bag because the pocket is pulling everything. So either your pocket will end up like this with like a gaping, or if you have a closure, you'll have like two gapings or like a wavy bag, which doesn't look that appealing. I'm sure you can agree. So what I like to do to prevent that from happening is to take my panels, and before you go and baste your pocket to your main panel, make sure to move the top corners of your slip pocket inwards. So I typically move it by about 2 to 5 millimeters, depending on the thickness of my fabric and stabilizer. So between 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch, you would move your corners equally. So on both sides, you move it equally, just like that, inwards. This will give you that extra space. So even though now we have that waviness, I'm not sure if you can see that on the camera, when we finish constructing our bag, the seam will naturally curve at the sides. So this extra space is what is necessary to prevent the main panel from being wavy. Now we're going to make the internal slip pocket. So take your remaining pieces and place them right sides together, line them up, clip or pin just the top edge. Here we go. When you are ready, you can take this to the machine and sew the seam. Take this to the pressing station, separate your panels, press the seam allowance open. Then you can bring those two pieces wrong sides together and press the seam nice and flat. Then you can take this to the machine, top stitch along that finished seam, and then baste the remaining edges. Once you've got your pocket ready, you can take the back lining piece, place your pocket on top, so right sides are facing up. You want to line up the edges and clip everything together. Now you can take this to the machine and baste your pocket in place. If you want to create 2 or more compartments, go ahead, take a ruler and a pen and just draw a line where you want to stitch. So let's say I want to create 2 compartments. One's going to be slightly smaller, so I'm just going to take my pen and draw a line just like this. So once I baste the pocket, then I'm going to stitch over that line to create those 2 compartments. if you already have the stabilizer fused to your main panels, don't forget to top stitch your handles and your connector. But since I don't have the stabilizer yet, I'm going to do that in a later stage. So for now, you're going to take your lining pieces. So this is the front lining and this is the external front panel, and place them wrong sides together. So I'm going to place my pieces like this, line up the edges and clip everything together. If, like me, you don't have stabilizer yet, then only clip the bottom half of your panel. So what I do is just clip just this bottom part, so later I'll be able to slide the stabilizer in. If you already have your stabilizer, go ahead and clip the entire seam. So now what you can do is to take this to the machine, and if you have stabilizer, baste those two pieces around all sides. If you don't have a stabilizer, then only baste this bottom panel here. So whatever is below the seam, you only want to start around here and only baste the bottom part of your panel. Before we slide in our stabilizer, what I like to do is to mark where I'm going to stop top stitching the handle. So usually I would measure about 4 centimeters from the seam up and draw a line. I do that on both ends. Now you can take your stabilizer and slide it between the panels. So you want to take your time. Just slide it in. You can clip the lining so it is out of the way. So I'm just going to clip it on the sides, just like that. Then we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to top stitch our handle up to that line. So we're going to stitch a little rectangle on both ends. And then we're going to do exactly the same thing on the connector. So I'm going to start at the top, just stitch down, go as close as I can get to the hardware, stitch across and then go back. And if you want, you can install a couple of rivets to just anchor everything nice and secure. Here we go, just like that. Now you can flip this to the back and finish basting the top part of your lining. So if you want, you can just clip that in place. There we go. And then take this to the machine and baste the top part of your panel. Now you can repeat the same process for the back panel, but remember to orient your lining in correct way so you don't end up with your slip pocket being upside down. I've done that once, so as a side note, make sure you orient your pieces in the correct way. So again, you're going to place them wrong sides together, stitch only half portion. Then you're going to place your stabilizer in, top stitch your handle and your connector, and then finish basting the top portion. Now we're going to work on our zipper casing. So since I'm working with zipper by the meter and I have 2 zipper pulls, I'm going to leave those zipper pulls aside for later, and I also cut my zipper slightly longer than the panel, just so it's easier for me to insert those zipper pulls later on. So to start, what you're going to do is to take one of your external zipper casings and place your zipper facing down. So right side of the fabric is facing the right side of the zipper. You want to line up the zipper along the edge, and then you can clip it or pin it in place. Here we go. If you want, you can take one of your lining pieces and place it on top as well and move your clips to hold everything in place. But I know sometimes it is very difficult, and sometimes your zipper may to kind of shift a little bit between the fabrics, so I prefer to do it in stages. So now I'm going to take this to the machine and I'm going to baste my zipper in place. Now you can take your lining piece and place it on top. So right side of the lining is facing the wrong side of your zipper. You want to line up the edges and again clip everything together. When you are ready, take this to the machine and sew the seam. Now you can take this to the pressing station, separate your panels. Then you can bring them wrong sides together, just like that, and then press the seam nice and flat. After you have your seam nice and flat, you will be able to top stitch along that finished seam. Now you can take your stabilizer and place it between the external and lining fabric, just like that. Then you can clip everything together and baste the remaining 3 sides. But before I do that, I'm going to trim my stabilizer slightly because it is a little bit too wide and I want to make sure I don't have it inside my seam allowance. So I'm just going to take scissors and trim it down, and then I'm going to baste everything together. So next you can take the remaining external and lining pieces and your stabilizer and repeat the steps on the other side of your zipper. So now you can insert your zipper pulls. Here we go. Then you can trim any excess. So I've got excess zipper on both sides, so I'm going to trim it down. I like to burn the edges of my zipper to prevent them from fraying. When you are ready, you can take the external gusset and place it on top of your external zipper casing. Line up the sides and clip them together. Do that on the other side as well and baste along those side edges. Now you can take your lining piece and place it on the other side of your zipper casing. So again, right sides are facing each other. You're going to place the gusset on top, line up the short edges and pin or clip them together. When you are ready, you can take this to the machine and sew those two short seams. Now you can bring your gussets wrong sides together. So you're going to flip them right side out. Here we go, just like that. You want to press those seams nice and flat. So if you want to, take this to the pressing station now and press those seams nice and flat. Then you're going to take this to the machine and top stitch along those finished seams. If your gusset already has a stabilizer, go ahead, line up your edges. So line up the lining and external pieces together, and you can clip them around those two sides. But if, like me, you still need to insert your stabilizer, only baste one side. Go ahead and insert your stabilizer now. So you will have to take your time, don't rush. So next you can take this to the machine and baste the other side. Now we are ready to assemble our laptop bag. So to do that, make sure you have midpoints marked along each side of your front and back panels. Then you're going to take your gusset and match the notches on your gusset with the notches on your front panel. So right sides are facing each other. You want to make sure your zipper is along the top edge. So keep your handle out of the way for now. Line up the notches and clip them together. You're going to do that on each side. So just take your time, be precise. Here we go. So once you have your 4 notches clipped, then you'll be able to line up the curves. So if you have to, go ahead and snip the gusset around those curved corners. This will allow the straight edge of your gusset to line up nicely around that curve. So just snip your fabric like this every 5 millimeters, and this way it will be much easier for you to line up those edges. Here we go, and repeat the same process on all remaining corners. So this is how it looks like. So when you are ready, you can take this to the machine and sew the entire seam. What I found it's much easier to stitch with the gusset on top, so as you can see now. And I typically change my presser foot to more of a narrow foot or a zipper foot. I found it much easier to sew, especially around those corners. Double check if you don't have any puckering, especially around those corners. And if you are happy with everything, go ahead and trim the seam allowance by half. So what I do is to take a ruler and my pen, and I measure about 5 millimeters, 1/4 of an inch from the stitching, and draw myself a guideline to where I have to trim my fabric. Because what you want is to have a nice and neat seam, and you want to have a precise seam throughout. So you want to be consistent throughout the entire panel. So by measuring and marking that 5 millimeters, I'll be able to trim the seam allowance nice and precise. Now you can take your bias binding and finish off the raw edge. So to do that, you're going to unfold one side and then line it up your binding on top of your gusset with right side facing each other. There are different ways of joining two ends of your bias binding. I have a separate video tutorial that will show you various different methods, so you can pick whichever you prefer. In the sewing instructions, I tell you to unfold your binding and then fold the end by 45 degrees, just like this, and then place it on top. So I'm going to use this method in this video tutorial. So now I'm going to take some clips and I'm going to start clipping my binding around the entire gusset. When you get to the beginning, place your binding over the beginning, and then you can trim any excess. So you want to make sure some of that binding overlaps. Now you can take this to the machine and using 5 millimeters, 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, stitch that binding around the entire panel. You're going to bring the binding towards the other side. So you're going to wrap it around that seam allowance, just like that. And clip that in place. And you're going to do that around the entire panel. Once you've got that clipped, you can take this to the machine and stitch that binding in place. To ensure you have a nice, neat stitching line on both sides, keep consistent seam allowance. So make sure that the folded edge of your binding covers the previous stitching line. So you don't want to see that stitching line. And make sure you are consistent throughout. This way, when you are top stitching, you'll have a nice and neat stitching line on both sides of your binding. This is how it should look like. So you should have nice, neat stitching line on both sides of your binding. So next you're going to take your back panel and repeat the steps. So again, you're going to line up your back panel and gusset right sides together, match your notches, clip everything around and sew the seam. Then you're going to trim the seam allowance and next finish the edge with bias binding. If you need to, give your laptop back a final press. Otherwise, this project is now finished. Well done! If you enjoyed this tutorial, let me know in the comments section. And if you would like to see more videos like this from me in the future, make sure to subscribe to my channel. See you next time! Stay crafty, friends! Bye!